Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports. You're joining us for our weekly live show that we do every week on a Monday. And title for today, of course, Perez wins the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. And not just that, but is Red Bull too strong this season? We're going to be talking about all the things that happened over this weekend. And that, of course, of Alonso getting his 100th podium and discussing that whole debacle that happened yesterday, literally whilst we were also still live on stream, and all the other things that, of course, happened in the last week on Formula One. So, of course, we start with the big news that, of course, Perez winning the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, and the Red Bull's just another one too.
Sergio Perez having a very dominant day yesterday. Himself and Max Verstappen being a good 17 seconds ahead of the likes of Fernando Alonso in third place. Max Verstappen obviously having a brilliant race yesterday, making his way all the way up from 15th position on the grid up into second at the end of that race.
Yes, indeed. And Red Bull's just looking so strong, and one has to worry as to whether they're going to run away with it. Of course, both of them start having a little bit of issues in the last 10 laps. But that didn't really affect the race at all. So, there's still lots of work for the other teams to do in order to catch them.
Yes, certainly also looking like there is still some work to do in that Red Bull garage. Obviously, Max Verstappen complaining a bit with some drivetrain issues, just some slipping, as well as Sergio Perez then saying that he had a long break. Engineers, though, were happy to allow them to continue to the end of the race, which they did complete. Once again, still a good 17 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso in third place. We don't want to see them, though, doing this. We want to see them being caught by the rest of that grid and having some closer races. We don't enjoy races where they just are able to run away with it like this.
Yeah, and, we mentioned Fernando Alonso then, and we'll go back to Red Bull. But, I mean, I'm sure we'll see some more pace found, and, of course, different tracks will allow different cars to hopefully take advantage of it. Qualifying pace was a lot closer this weekend, which is good. Still, however, the Red Bull's in their favour.
I still don't think we necessarily saw a very representative time, though, from those Red Bulls. We didn't get that quali lap or the Q3 lap from Max Verstappen due to him having that clutch failure in quali 2, where he ended up finishing in 15th position due to not setting a time. I think he certainly would have broken that 1 minute and 28 second mark.
Yeah, I mean, Max Verstappen, of course, going out in that Q2. We didn't really get to see the quickest possible qualifying pace. But on track, of course, yesterday, Perez was matching, if not bettering, most of Max Verstappen's lap times around the circuit. And as a result, Max Verstappen could not catch Perez right at the top once he managed to get himself into second. So Perez still showing some very good form there in that Red Bull car. But, of course, after those two Red Bulls was Fernando Alonso in that Aston Martin, who was third, then not third, and then third again. I mean, what a debacle.
Just a complete mess from the FIA there yesterday. They obviously gave him that penalty a few laps after the start due to his incorrect grid position at the start. He was just a little bit to the left of his grid box. So, yes, they gave him a penalty for that, unfortunately. He served it then under the safety car. Then 35 laps later, after the podium ceremony, they decided, no, we're going to give him a 10-second penalty because he's not allowed to have served that penalty under the safety car. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
And then, of course, Aston Martin then luckily did obviously appeal the decision and went and claimed the whole rule with regards to, and I say Reece will just read the rule exactly what they used.
The FIA has a sporting regulation. It is sporting regulation article 16.3, and the article says, any decision or communication concerning a particular competitor should be given to him within 25 minutes of such a decision. It took more than 35 laps, though, for a decision on Alonso's penalty to be decided. I mean, just such a joke from the FIA, going against their own rules. What is the point in having all of these regulations if they're just going to chop and change them?
And not just that, of course, they're almost embarrassed, and they did, in fact, embarrass both teams because Fernando Alonso finished the race, got weighed, was doing the whole celebrations along with Aston Martin, went out onto the podium, got his trophy, had the whole champagne, sprayed each other, had the whole celebrations, and afterwards was then told, oh no, you didn't actually finish third, you finished fourth. And so what happened then? Mercedes then went and got champagne and got the trophy for George Russell and tried to have their own little mini celebrations because, they then thought... And then they went back to Russell and had to say, actually, as much as we then gave you the trophy, can we have that trophy back, please? and give it back to Alonso, who then gets it back rightfully. So it's real mess that they made.
It's very embarrassing for Formula One, as well as the FIA. I mean, Formula One, the group must certainly be having some serious conversations with the FIA at the moment. I mean, it's the second race of the season, and we're already having just stupid decisions from the FIA.
I mean, absolutely a bit of a joke, really. And also, I mean, it wasn't very difficult for the FIA to go and tell Aston Martin the fact that, oh, by the way, you guys have just served the 5-second time penalty during your pit stop. You can't actually do that.
And
can you please go and take it again? They wouldn't have minded that. They would have said, okay, fine, we didn't serve it correctly, fine, we'll make a plan for that. Because even as Alonso said in his interview yesterday, he said, had they known, they wouldn't have built that gap up to just 5 seconds. They would have tried to build that gap up to 11 seconds. He would have pushed hard for the rest of the race. So, these are the sort of things they need to know, which is why that original late decision from the FIA was then overturned again through Aston Martin's appeal, because they said, you can't do that because our entire strategies would have changed as a result if we'd got that penalty earlier, as we should have.
Well, yes, and there is that sporting regulation that states that they have that certain amount of time to make a decision. But all in all, Fernando Alonso was at least able to have his 100th podium of his racing career, which is absolutely phenomenal for the Spaniard there.
I mean, 100 podiums for Fernando Alonso at 41 years old. That's quite incredible, isn't it? Just tells you how he's still there, very much strong in the game, and very much a competitive racer on the grid. And, we look at Fernando Alonso's teammate, however, of course, quite new into the sport comparatively. He was probably maybe looking at trying to compete for a podium position yesterday, or at least right up there. Unfortunately, he could not finish the race due to engine faults on the car for that Aston Martin. So he was told to stop on track, which was very disappointing for Aston Martin, because they were hoping to extend their lead, well, their lead of the best of the rest, basically outside of Red Bull. So it's quite disappointing that Lance Stroll unfortunately had to retire early on. So real mixed bag day for Aston Martin. They got a really, really successful race out of Fernando Alonso, and unfortunately Lance Stroll's car did not last. So interesting that Lance Stroll's car was the one that had problems.
Yes, very interesting that Lance Stroll had those issues. Certainly very fortunate that Lance Stroll had the issue and not Fernando Alonso. Of course, Aston Martin would not like either of their cars to have an issue during the race. They would ideally like to be able to score points in both of those cars. But, I mean, if we did want one of the cars to have an issue, it was going to be Lance Stroll rather than Fernando Alonso, who was fighting for third position in that race.
Yes, and actually fought for right at the top there, right at the beginning of the race, of course. Got that 5-second penalty for an incorrect placement on the grid, but still managed to take Perez very early on that very first corner of the lap. So a great little start from Fernando Alonso, and he was there and thereabouts with that Red Bull for a good about 10 to 15 laps until such times the safety car came out and they really did just pull away the Red Bulls.
Yes, those Red Bulls, though, just in another world, in another sport, really. I mean, we certainly hope to see the other teams being able to make some gains on them throughout the season, especially those Aston Martins.
Yes, and of course now we're just going to look a bit at the winners and the losers from yesterday's Grand Prix. And I mean, there were quite a few losers, unfortunately, that we have to talk about. And let's just look here. So we go through it. Of course, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and I'm just reading now. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was a display in utter dominance from a Red Bull team who appear to have built one of the all-time great F1 race cars. Whilst that made for a frustrating race for some rivals, there were shoots of hope for others. We've picked our 6 winners and 5 losers from Jeddah. So, a winner, Sergio Perez, of course, went on to win the Grand Prix. So, of course, there's no doubt as to why he would be there, beating his teammate Max Verstappen, and now almost should have, and he did have the fastest lap right up until the very last lap of the race, where Max Verstappen then got the fastest lap of the race, thus allowing him to get that extra point to go ahead of Perez. Verstappen on 43, Perez on 42.
Verstappen on 44 points.
Sorry, the other way.
Perez on 43 points.
I meant that one.
Max Verstappen is 1 point ahead in the Drivers' Championship at this moment.
So Sergio Perez, of course, doing very well to win the Grand Prix yesterday, maximised the points for his chase for that Drivers' Championship, which I'm sure he's going to be eyeing this year as a potential cause. Lots of debate happening in the Red Bull garage at the moment, and a bit of politics happening. We can see Perez wondering and seeing and permanently feeling that the Red Bull team is favouring Max, and he wants to be favoured as well.
It'll be interesting to see if we get another Mark Webber Sebastian Vettel issue that Red Bull had, obviously, all those years ago, where the two drivers, well, one of the drivers didn't necessarily want to listen to team orders, and they ended up scrapping it out on track. I mean, it would certainly be very, very exciting for us to watch, but you are making me stick to a slower delta. Why are you doing this? But of course, then the engineer saying you are free to push as much as you want, and then he just extended that lead once more on Max Verstappen.
Yeah, so it's going to be very, very interesting to follow the politics there in Red Bull between Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen. That will be certainly one to watch for the rest of the season. We move on to losers, a set of losers from yesterday, McLaren. And we talked about McLaren yet again, hoping that they'd found pace through Piastri in that Q3, seemingly not. Of course, he did take damage. We don't know what would have happened with McLaren otherwise, but they did find themselves right at the back of the grid, and they never really pushed on from there. And we just read the article here, and it goes, it says, McLaren's painful start to the season continued in Saudi Arabia as Oscar Piastri's fine qualifying quickly became a distant memory when he made opening lap contact with Pierre Gasly. That forced the Australian to stop at the end of the lap, while debris from that incident flew into teammate Lando Norris's path, breaking the Britain's front wing and forcing him to stop as well. Thereafter, it became an extended test session for the British team, who are at the bottom of the Constructors' Championship and one of the only two teams who have yet to score so far this year. So a really, really disappointing day yet again for McLaren.
Yes, it's just been dismal for McLaren so far. They just cannot seem to catch a break. Obviously, having that software issue for Oscar Piastri in Bahrain, as well as that, I think it was a hydraulics issue for Lando Norris. Yes, just really, really poor from them once again. Obviously, not their fault as much this time, but still finishing all the way at the back of the grid.
And it was almost looking promising for McLaren because the pace was better yesterday from the qualifying, but then the race, of course, just did not turn out all well. Oscar Piastri picks up contact, and then the debris from that damages Lando Norris's car. I mean, really didn't help at all. Luck not favouring McLaren at all, but hopefully the only good thing that McLaren can take away from this weekend was their race pace in terms of their qualifying pace was a lot better than that of Bahrain. So hopefully in Melbourne, Australia, they will improve even more. And that will, of course, be Oscar Piastri's first ever home F1 race, taking over the reins from Daniel Ricciardo, being the Australian now on the grid, Oscar Piastri in that McLaren. And we look at another winner, that of Max Verstappen. What an insane race Max Verstappen, of course, got due to his starting in 15th and then ending up in second place.
Yes, we also saw, of course, Charles Leclerc making up quite a few positions. We haven't spoken about him just yet in our stream today, but Charles Leclerc also doing very well. But Max Verstappen just on another level once again, being able to fight from 15th position to finish in second, almost being able to fight for that P1 spot, but Sergio Perez just keeping that gap above 5 seconds to Max Verstappen in the end.
Yes, and another loser we look at, unfortunately, Alex Albon. Very disappointing day for him. Alex Albon felt he didn't quite execute qualifying properly, but was optimistic about Sunday, given Williams' stronger race pace. And in the early stages of the race, it looked like a second consecutive top 10 finish was on the cards as the Thai driver got the most out of his package. But an issue in the mechanical brake system forced his retirement. And with his teammate Logan Sargent ending up 16th, Williams left Jeddah empty-handed. Yeah, very disappointing, unfortunately, for Alex Albon to have that brake issue, forced him out of the race, and we saw that. Luckily, it was only didn't have to stop on track, didn't cause another safety car, but had to nurse his car all the way back to the pits and retire. So a really, really disappointing day for him.
Yes, certainly very disappointing for Alex Albon. He showed such great pace in qualifying, as well as his race pace was looking very good until he had that brake failure. Yes, as you said though, Mark, very lucky that he did not have to stop on track. Lucky that he didn't have a big accident due to having that brake failure. He was able to nurse it back into the pits and able to retire the car quite safely, thank goodness.
And we now look at the next winner, that of Fernando Alonso, of course. We know about Fernando Alonso getting into that third position, being the best car outside of those two Red Bull cars. Doing very, very well. And we just read here and it says he led the opening lap of the Grand Prix for the first time in close to 11 years when he nipped past Perez into turn 1 and kept a level head when he told he had a 5-second penalty for starting the race out of position of his grid slot. And it continues. The Spaniard lost his podium briefly after the race when handed a penalty from the stewards, but that was overturned meaning he has consecutive podiums for the first time since 2013, 10 years later. So great result there for Fernando Alonso in terms of that. This was also his 100th career podium, making him only the 6th driver after Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, Alain Prost, and Kimi Raikkonen to achieve that feat. So great day.
Yes, certainly a great day for Fernando Alonso. Obviously, just showing such class once again, showing his absolute racing wisdom there. I've just found an article though online just talking about Sergio Perez taking a little bit of a dig at Red Bull, saying why did they tell him to slow down there in the end and allow Max Verstappen to take that fastest lap, already showing a bit of elbows getting out there in that Red Bull paddock. Certainly going to be one to watch till the end of this year.
100%. So Red Bull politics will be something very interesting to notice. But we go back to Aston Martin and loser Lance Stroll, of course. We go and read Lance Stroll's shocking little piece, unfortunately, there. Had to stop on track. And we just read here, it says, Lance Stroll did manage to get past Carlos Sainz. As I say, he's had a great start to the race, was getting past the Ferrari there, and was then challenging with those Mercedes and was getting very close to George Russell before having to be told to stop on track. And it was quite the spectacle otherwise. And we read on, it says, but he never got a chance to see what was possible after an energy recovery issue curtailed his race after just 18 laps. The Canadian didn't have the pace to match teammate Alonso all weekend, but he's still recovering from 2 fractured wrists and a broken toe sustained just a few weeks ago. So disappointing day for Lance Stroll, but I'm sure he will recover very quickly in Melbourne, Australia.
Yes, he should be able to be completely back up to speed by then in terms of his health and recovering from those 2 broken wrists and broken toe. But he still showed such great pace yesterday, being able to pass that Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and hold him off for quite a while until he had that unfortunate mechanical failure.
And our next winner of the day was that of George Russell. And it goes and reads, it says, George Russell had to give Alonso the 3rd place trophy back, unfortunately, having held it while the Spaniard was temporarily penalised post-race. The Briton can still consider Sunday afternoon a job well done, however. The Mercedes driver had the pace to keep up with Alonso throughout the Grand Prix, while also comfortably having the beating of both Ferraris. While he will aspire to significantly higher results, considering the struggles his team are currently enduring, P4 was a fine result for him.
Yes, was definitely a good result considering where they started the season. They certainly weren't expecting to be able to beat out both Ferraris here yesterday evening, with 2 Ferraris not having any mechanical failures. I'm sure that will be a big step up for them. Ferrari are certainly going to be having to look at their car and see why they are not able to perform so well on the street circuit.
No, not at all. And we'll continue on because I'm sure they are a loser in this list. And next loser, Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda losing out on that 10th position in the very last lap of the race to Kevin Magnussen in that Haas. So a very frustrating day for him not being able to get points for the 2nd race running for the season.
Yuki was actually showing some great pace in the race there, having a good battle with Kevin Magnussen, being able to take that position quite a few times. They were swapping it out multiple times throughout that race, but in the end just losing it to Kevin Magnussen. The Haas is also showing some great pace this weekend.
Yes, indeed. And we look at the next one, and it's a quiet winner, and it's certainly something that's slipped under the radar, but we did note it yesterday. And that was the winners of Alpine. And it says that an uneventful, aptly describes Alpine Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, but Esteban Ocon will have wanted just that after his penalty-laden season opener in Bahrain. The Frenchman got himself on the board with eighth, which incidentally is his lowest finish in Jeddah in 3 starts, 1 place higher than teammate Pierre Gasly, who maintained his 100% point-scoring start to 2023. So Alpine still there, finishing in 8th and 9th, just behind those big teams, of course. So certainly being the best of the rest outside of the Big Four. And solidifying that yesterday.
Yeah, still a quiet race from them, but nonetheless, still very good points for the team. I'm sure they will be very happy with that.
And we move on to the big losers, of course, that we talked about. That of Ferrari yesterday. And we just read and then we'll comment. And it just goes and says, this was a sobering weekend for Ferrari, who began with a suite of power unit component changes, one of which triggered a grid penalty for Charles Leclerc and ended it as the 4th fastest team. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc were unlucky to pit before the safety car, with their Mercedes rivals able to stop cheaply, but they ultimately didn't have the pace to compete at the sharp end. Leclerc nonetheless got off to the mark with 7th, having fought his way into points after starting on a soft compound, while Sainz's second score keeps him 4th in the standings.
Disappointing day out for Ferrari, of course, pitting before that safety car, just missing out on that pretty much a free stop. We saw the likes of Aston Martin taking that, with Fernando Alonso being able to use that safety car pit stop to do his penalty, as well as both Red Bulls just waiting it out. I think Ferrari also just needed to wait, just play the long game a little bit and utilize the safety car, which is such a high possibility at a street circuit like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, it was very unfortunate, however, because you couldn't predict exactly when it would have hit, and it was in that pit window, of course, for Ferrari, and they went literally just a lap before, and then all the other teams utilized that safety car to go and pit. So, nonetheless, though, disappointed day, as it says, in terms of race pace, they still weren't quick enough to keep up with those Mercedes, and Mercedes who are having so many problems at the moment.
Small glimmer of hope, though, for Ferrari in the fact that they did make some good strategic decisions where they were able to just dummy pit stop the Aston Martins and forced Lance Stroll to come in a bit earlier than they would have wanted to, making him fall back a little bit. I think Carlos Sainz was then able to get ahead of him before his engine failure, unfortunately.
And we just have a comment here just before we move on. It says, from Formula 1 and spelled WAM, which I quite enjoy. It says, which country are you guys from? And we are from South Africa. So, yeah, something different maybe for some of you. But we are from sunny South Africa. So, great to have you here, Formula 1. Let us know where you're watching from as well. And we move on to our next winner and last winner from this article, that of Kevin Magnussen, who did take the place of Yuki Tsunoda right at the end there. Kevin Magnussen scored his first and Haas's first points of the season after a hard-fought drive into 10th.
Yes, certainly a very good race for the Haas. That should be a good indication for the rest of the season ahead of them if they are able to get such a good balance in the car early on in the race weekend, as the article says. Just good to see Kevin Magnussen being able to challenge a bit further up the grid this year.
Yeah, and the Haas's were not slow yesterday either. I mean, they were really fighting it out quite nicely in the midfield battle there, and a few really, really nice long battles as well, which was great to watch for all of us. And of course, we'll just go back here, and there are other things we can talk about. But I mean, ultimately, Red Bull dominating yesterday again. Aston Martin still the second best team. Ferrari disappointing not to have got ahead of Mercedes. So, other things we can talk about is at least the other cars in the midfield seem to have found a bit more pace. They were not so far off as they were in Bahrain. I felt personally in Bahrain that it was Red Bull, Aston Martin, then a big distance to Ferrari, and then Mercedes, and then even bigger distance to all the other teams. Whereas yesterday I felt it was a lot closer for most of the other teams outside of the Red Bull.
I think the main reason, though, that we did see those teams being so much closer together was because of that safety car that just kind of neutralized the race. I think it was around lap 25 that we had it.
Yeah, just before lap 25. But yeah, I mean, still 25 laps later into the race, and we were still relatively a bit of a tighter grid at least.
Yes, but still showing that absolute dominance of Red Bull to be able to pull out a 17-second lead on the likes of Fernando Alonso. It must have been well over 20 seconds down to George Russell in 4th. We don't want to see them once again. I said this earlier in the stream. We don't want to see them running away with a race like this. I mean, Max Verstappen coming all the way down from 15th and still able to pull out a massive gap on Fernando Alonso.
Yes, indeed. And Formula 1 there just saying, appreciate your hard work on your stream. So really, really do thank you for that comment. We'll try our best to bring you the best news and latest news, of course, in that of the Formula 1 world. So, yeah, that was the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. That's our live show on a Monday. We do this every Monday, and we would really appreciate all of you guys joining us every Monday to review the weekend and ask us questions and comment all of your thoughts with regards to F1 over the last week. And so if you guys are wanting to know what happens on this channel, this is Forever Sports. We do multiple sports across the channel, and of course this is the Forever Motorsports segment. That's where me and Reece operate the most. Of course, we cover all F1 content, the latest breaking news. Our Monday show is, of course, every Monday. We do it live. We will always preview every Grand Prix, and we do a little show on Thursday as well. And then we'll always live stream all of the races as well, and we'll be there with you to give you stats and commentary over all of the sessions throughout the entire season. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications for the channel so that you guys can be aware of when our next uploads do arrive on your pages as well. And yeah, just join us for the Formula One season. We really, really want to build up a big community, of course, and hopefully we can get some more comments and more chats going so that we can basically create a really, really good discussion with regards to Formula One.
Yes, it was certainly great to have so many people engaging with us on our stream yesterday. Certainly makes our life a lot easier as commentators, being able to chat back and forth with all of you. We certainly are looking very forward to the Australian Grand Prix when we can talk to all of you once again.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully in Australia, we're going to see teams bunched up a lot more, and we're going to see a bit more of a competitive Ferrari, hopefully again. And let's see both Aston Martins hopefully finish the race and see where they should both finish. Let's see if Lars Stroll is going to be able to take advantage of that Aston Martin car and put himself maybe into fourth.
Yes, it will certainly be very interesting to see. We certainly hope you all join us for those streams. We will be streaming all of the practice sessions as well as qualifying and the race. Also, all of the Formula 2 and Formula 3 sessions, if they are taking place that weekend.
100%. And not just that, of course, just on the Thursday next week, so not this week Thursday, but the Thursday next week, we will be doing a live stream, very fun little gaming stream, where we will all race the F1 crew here, me and Reece, and as well as the Forever Sports team, will be racing in Melbourne in the F1 22 game. So we will be racing around that circuit. You can come join us for a good laugh and some great content there with regards to us racing around and seeing exactly how you should not race in Melbourne, of course. And we really look forward to having you guys there. It's always on our Forever Sports Extra channel. That is one of our partner channels. If you go onto Forever Sports, you go to other channels there, or partner channels, I think it's called, and you'll see Forever Sports Extra there. That's what you can also subscribe to so that you can be notified of that race. But otherwise, we will see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a subscribe and a comment afterwards. And yeah, we will see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching Forever Motorsports. Reece has been Reece. I've been Mark. And until next time.